Success! Oh, hi. Glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. I turn 40 this year. Very excited. A lot of people get very excited. And I'm a huge fan of movies. I'm a big cinephile. So, credit where credit's due. One of my favorite YouTubers that I've been following for years did a video similar to this. So, this was his idea. Credit where credit's due. I will say that Dan Merle made a video about how he was turning 40 and he wanted to talk about a movie for each year, 40 movies. Great idea. Great idea. And I was like, you know what? I want to do that. So, credit where credit's due. This was Dan Merle's idea. But I'm going to run with it. So I'm going to talk about some movies, but I'm not going to talk about 40 movies. I'm going to talk about 40 movies, one per video. But I'm also going to talk about the honorable mentions for each year. Because, man, going through these years, this was one of the hardest lists I've ever had to make. So many of these years, especially once I got to, like, the 90s, it's so hard to, like, there's so many movies that came out that year that had a huge impact on me for many reasons. So I will touch on multiple films, but there will always be one reigning champ of that year for personal reasons. A couple things. Most of these movies I will have seen in theaters. That was one of the qualifiers. Most of them. There's a couple of exceptions, but most of them I will have seen in theaters. And then the selection for that year will be a film that had the biggest impact on my life overall. Whether it's what happened at that time that impacted me, or the film itself kept impacting me for years and years on end. So, like I said, that's why there's going to have to be runners-up and things I will mention. And having said that, I won't... These aren't the only movies I like in that year. Every single one of these years has tons of movies that I absolutely love that will not be mentioned. These are specifically movies that impacted me personally, whether it be my life, an experience I had, or my personality. Like, a lot of these are just movies that I happen to quote or am shaped to a certain way I think about certain things. Yada, yada, yada. So this is going to be a unique one because we're going to start with the year before I was born for the honorable mentions. Because there are three movies in 1982 that had a big impact on me, and I guess I'll consider that my in utero year, so why not? Although, first and foremost, about 3 months before I was conceived, I can do math, so I know when I was conceived, E.T. the Extraterrestrial came out in 1982. And that was the one and only. There's a couple other movies that had scenes that disturbed me and scared me as a child, but E.T. was the one and only film my entire life that scared the crap out of me. Absolutely terrifying. I don't understand why anyone thinks that he's a lovable little alien. I don't understand why anyone would think he's cute. He is terrifying. He's horrifying. When I was very, very young, my boogeyman was E.T. When I was in the dark, scared about what was around the corner, E.T. is what I was terrified I might find. Horrifying. Specifically when you first meet him, I mean, for the most part, when Elliot first sees him and you first get him in his full glow, in the cornfield with the flashlight and then the... Nope. I would have punched him right in the face and ran the other way. Never. And then you've got the scene where he's in the creek when they find him and he's like, and he's all withered and white and... and then when he's dead and he's... E.T. absolutely terrifying. So I wanted to mention that. Only movie that I was growing up, whether I was 10, 20, or 30. What's a movie that's... There's only one, E.T. Only recently have I been able to, kind of watch it. Don't really enjoy it, though. And then, about 2 months before I was conceived, Tron came out. The original film, Tron, in 1982. Loved it as a kid growing up. And it ended up having a much larger impact later, which is why I just wanted to mention it now. Because, spoiler alert, one of the films we'll be discussing in a future video is Tron Legacy, that probably had one of the biggest impacts on my life of any movie ever. And I'm looking forward to discussing that. So I did want to acknowledge the original Tron, without which Tron Legacy would not exist. And then, 3 months after I was conceived, so at this point I was technically alive. Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. I don't want to get political. But when I was in my mother's belly, in December of 1982, The Dark Crystal was released. A couple things I want to mention about this film. Now, I mentioned E.T., yes. However, there were two movies growing up that scared me. E.T. and The Dark Crystal. Because The Dark Crystal specifically, especially as a young person, every single character in that film, even the good guys, the protagonists, and what have you, every single one is absolutely terrifying. Creepy. Creepy AF. So flippin' creepy. Especially like when they strip down the crow guy, the Skeksis, and he's like, and shivering all naked in the corner. Like, that movie terrified me. Every character is creepy and terrifying. And I was like, no, I don't like this. I don't want this. Once I was about like 25, 30, I started to appreciate the film, and it no longer bothers me. I'm okay with The Dark Crystal now. E.T. no longer scares me, but still creeps me the heck out, and I don't want to watch it. The Dark Crystal, however, I eventually came around to appreciating its brilliance, and I love that movie, especially the show on Netflix that they canceled. But I love everything about The Dark Crystal now, but when I was young, that movie scared the pants off me, didn't enjoy a single moment of it. Everything about it was creepy as heck. And on the note of The Dark Crystal, I challenge you to name me another live-action film that does not feature a human character. I can't think of any. Live-action film, not one human character. Well, there's not one that I've seen anyway. Comment below if you know of a good one, a mainstream one that most people have heard of. Because I can't think of any. You know, you've got Labyrinth, humans. You get my point. There's always at least one human. But The Dark Crystal, not a single human, completely puppets. Brilliant film. That such an underrated gem. What an absolutely fantastic movie. Or should I say, such an underrated crystal. Perhaps an underrated shard. I actually have a replica of the shard. Okay, anyway. So, that was the year before I was born. Getting to the year I was born. 1983. I have two honorable mentions. About 3 months before I was born, two films came out. One of them was The Outsiders. Great cast. Look it up. 1983's The Outsiders. Classic story, classic play turned into a film. You've got Tom Cruise. You've got names that aren't coming to mind right now, but they're all in it. I'm seeing their faces too, but I ain't got time to think of mine. Excuse me. I ain't got time to think of names right now because there's too much. Patrick Swayze, that's the one I was thinking of, and then you also got Emilio Estevez and what's his face? A lot of the cast members from Young Guns, actually. Anywho, but the reason I want to mention The Outsiders is because when I was in high school, we did a play of The Outsiders, and I was, of course, cast as Ponyboy. So when I hear the word "Stay Gold, Ponyboy," I take it very personal. And I was very proud to get the lead in that play, and I was very excited to do that play, but I had some struggles in high school, and long story short, I ended up being suspended. So I was suspended at the, very inconvenient time, and there was no understudy for me, so the drama teacher had to cancel the play. That was kind of a bummer for everybody because I got suspended. There was no Pony Boy, and then they couldn't do the play. So I never got to perform the play. I got to rehearse it a lot, but such a pity because I love the stage. I love the stage. Another honorable mention in 1983, 3 months before I was born, released Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. My personal, I love all of them. I love all their films. Say what you want about Life of Brian. Everybody thinks Holy Grail's the best. But personally, Monty Python's The Meaning of Life is my favorite Monty Python film. I absolutely love it. I think it's hilarious throughout. I love its structure. There's so many things about that movie that I quote to this day. And we would go on for 10 extra minutes if I just went over the things that I quote all the time. I love that movie. And again, most of these are theatrical experiences and things around the time, but obviously I was not even born yet. So some of these are going to be exceptions, like I said. When I first saw this film, my father showed it to me when I was, I'd say, about 18, 19, 20, somewhere around there. And I remember that day very vividly because he was showing me this film for the first time. I was having a blast watching it. And as part of our day, we made pizza together from scratch. Like my dad showed me to make the dough, put on our own toppings, our own sauce, our own cheese. We made a pizza from scratch. He just got this pizza stone thing for the oven. He was very excited. We had a blast. It was a very great bonding experience with my father, making pizza from scratch with him and watching Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, while also waiting for my girlfriend at the time to get off work. And she was a janitor at a church that I could see from my bedroom window. So after the pizza, after the movie, went upstairs, staring out my window, which I did a lot then, waiting to be able to see her, very, very far away, see her walk home from work so that I knew that she would be calling me soon, because this was before cell phones. And then, long story short, years later, her and I ended up getting married at that church. Anywho, so Monty Python's The Meaning of Life had a big impact on me. Okay, the final film of this video is the biggest impact on my life from the year I was born, 1983. Came out a month before I was born, but back then things were in theaters for a long time, and my parents couldn't see this particular film unless they brought me to it. So this was actually technically my first ever theatrical film that my mother brought me to when I was an infant. It was a little movie called Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. Spoiler alert, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Long story short. You could say it began there. It didn't really. It was when I was a youngin', and they would show Star Wars on TV before it was widely available all the time. Back then there was only 3 movies. And one day we were watching Empire Strikes Back. They always showed it on Easter on cable. And one day we were watching Empire Strikes Back, and my mom said, we gotta go. Like, we're on Dagobah right now, like the best part. She's like, we gotta go. We're gonna go to this play thing. Something about Easter and Jesus. I don't know. Resurrection. Anyway. She made us leave, and we were whining, Mom, we want to watch Star Wars. We want to watch Star Wars. She said, shut your chap. Not really. But she said, calm down. Come with me. Quit whining. I'll buy you the movies someday. That someday came pretty soon when the THX remastered VHS tapes with Leonard Maltin interviewing George Lucas at the beginning came out. That trilogy. Yeah, we found it at a Sam Goody. And yeah, man, I'm dating myself, aren't I? Well, I already said. I'm turning 40 this year. I'm very excited. He said, Mom, you said you'd buy us the trilogy. So sure enough, she bought us the THX remastered Star Wars trilogy. And actually, one moment. I don't have that box set in my possession anymore, I don't believe. But I did find this one day at a random used bookstore. I know, it's the first one, right? And we're talking about Return of the Jedi. And this isn't the THX version. This is the original CBS Fox version. But after I purchased this, I'm like, man, this is going to be worth something someday. I came home to discover it's not A New Hope, it's Return of the Jedi. This tape was made in 1990, but it's a 1983 film. Anyway, so my mother bought us the trilogy, and then that's where it went off the rails from there, because we were able to watch Star Wars, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi over and over and over and over and over and over and over as much as we wanted, and that's what began my obsession with Star Wars. But my oldest brother was born in 77 when A New Hope came out. My middle brother was born in 79, a year before Empire, but technically the year that A New Hope was re-released in theaters, and B, the year of the infamous holiday special. But I was born in 1983, a month after the release of Return of the Jedi, and that was the first movie I went to in a theater. And growing up, when there was only 3 Star Wars movies, Return of the Jedi, that's right, not Empire Strikes Back, and I still feel this way, Return of the Jedi was my favorite. You got Jabba's palace, you got Emperor, who's Emperor Palpatine, especially played by Ian McDiarmid, which was his first time playing that character. Emperor Palpatine is my number 1 favorite fictional character of all time. So there's also that. You get father versus son. You get the Death Star battle with the Endor battle with the lightsaber battle, all intertwined. You get the death of Yoda. You get Return of the Jedi is a far superior film to the other two, if you ask me. I remember being a kid. A New Hope was boring as hell. A New Hope is boring, especially for a child. Let's walk around the desert for half the movie, and then the ending was exciting, sure. I got more stories with that. We've already told them with my, one Lego review. Anyway. And then there's, Empire. Oh, Empire. Yes, Empire's a good time. I love all the Yoda stuff as a kid. But Return of the Jedi, when you've got Jabba's palace. And in this particular version, you still have retained the, pardon my vulgarity, but the booby slip. When Ula, the dancer, her boob pops out. And there's a few solid seconds of boob in that movie. I'm pretty sure they have since tweaked it. And you can no longer see such a thing. I think there still might be like a split second of the shot. Back then, it was like, booby. It was a big deal for I don't know, 10-year-old? 10-year-old? 7-year-old? 8-year-old? Whatever I was at the time. I was probably about 7, 8. Something like that. Anywho, so Return of the Jedi is the biggest, most influential film of the year I was born, 1983. I look forward to doing more of these. I don't know if anyone gives a darn or will watch, but if you do and are, thanks. Glad you made it all the way to the end. Look forward to the next one. See, Dan did one video going over 40 movies. I ain't got that kind of time. The video would be like 10 hours long. Because again, so many other films that are runners-up that I do have to talk about because they've made other big impacts on me. And then I just pick one in the end. But I do want to talk about so many. So I'm doing one video for every year. Yeah, that's right. I'm doing 40 videos. This is one of 40. Knowing me, some of them I'll have to break up into parts 1, 2, or 3. I'll try to talk fast and keep them all at least under 20, if not maybe 25 minutes max. This one I was rambling on for 20 minutes and I only talked about 6 movies, so we'll see what happens. The next one I've got 4 movies to talk about, so that's not too bad. I think we'll be able to do this. But I'll be doing 10 movies. I'll be doing 10 years a month. So for the month of February, I'm going to go through 83 to 92. Although technically I went through 82. So anyway. So I'll be doing 2 or 3 videos a week. If you care. Which you probably don't. But I do. And again, I'm doing this for me. Why not? It's fun. I like to talk about these things. I like to let it out. And I like to have it on record if anyone's ever curious. I can just direct them to the video. So yes, I was born in 1983 on June 15th. And I look forward to my 40th birthday. But we've got well over 40 movies to discuss and 40 years of influence before I get there. Okie dokie.